It's November 9, 2015. It's a Monday, EPBOptionMillionaires.com. After the market closed, you can see the S&P 500 lower today, a sharp decline right out of the gate. S&P 500 futures were lower overnight, continuing the theme that we saw really from the middle of last week. A slow bleeding to the downside. The jobs report on Friday not helping. Robust jobs report sending S&P 500 futures lower, and you see the reaction here over the weekend, people digesting that jobs report, much like we had just a month ago, to October 2nd. Jobs report helped fuel the rally off the lows. And this is the first big red candle we've had since the end of September when we hit those lows. Something to think about here is the U.S. dollar index starts to price in a possible rate hike. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. We've been hearing this for the last, 6 years. Has yet to come to fruition. But the U.S. dollar index, talked about this consolidation pattern here that we're going to see. We're break over 100. That's not going to be good for the market medium to long term, also for emerging markets. Anyone that needs to refinance, all those houses they're building, they're all predicated upon 0% interest rate policy. People can afford houses when it's 0% interest rate policy. When the interest rates start to rise, not so affordable. So we see housing prices maybe come down. What's going to happen? And if housing prices do come down, you're going to see houses go underwater as far as value is concerned. The neighbors are going, their houses are going to be worth less than they bought. We've seen this story before as well. But anyway, let's look at this U.S. dollar index. Look at this move we've had up. 2015 started in late 2014. Talked about the move to triple digits. We've consolidated. Now we're breaking out. I talked about this too the last couple of weeks. And this is all predicated, again, on the expectations the Federal Reserve is going to raise the Fed funds rate. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe it's going to be a 0.00001%, more of a symbolic move than anything else. And of course, down the road, this is going to come back to bite corporate earnings, especially those over the multinationals. The strong U.S. dollar is going to affect corporate earnings. Also, crude oil. I talked about this morning. The divergence here, you see U.S. dollar as the U.S. dollar gains strength. Look at the move we've had lower in crude oil. This is going to continue, folks. You can draw a trend line across from back in 1999 all the way across. We've broken below it. I've talked about this many times. Everybody keeps talking about, even this morning, Market Watch, the bottom for oil is in. I think it's going to be down at about the 30. We break through long-term trend line support here. Also, you can draw a trend line across from the 2009 lows, and that is going to mean energy. XLE, I talked about this as well. You can see each of these moves we've had off the lows. We've had the recent one off the September lows, the end of September. Nice move up, but again, in the context of this move, the trend is broken. The trend is broken. XLE, nice move to the downside coming. We could test the lows from the financial crisis down the road. Also want to look at the VIX, because the VIX today, the VIX was up over 15%. You can see when we crashed back at the end of August, we had to spike up. We've been melting ever since. Are we in an area now where you're going to be concerned about the move back over 20, which is going to imply lower stock prices? Something to keep an eye on. Corporate earnings certainly haven't been beating it out of the park, aside from Amazon and Google, a couple other names. A lot of the big corporations reporting earnings that have missed. And again, Apple still has not come back to its record high despite positive earnings reaction. Again, remains contained in this channel, and I think if it breaks lower here, the 115, I said about 119, it's a little bit above that. Today was over 121 before pulling back. Another stock to watch as it broke to new all-time record highs last week is Facebook. Facebook today had a nice sharp $2 reversal to the downside. I expect this earnings gap to get filled, and that would bring us back to about 103.50, 104. Again, as brought up with XLE, you can see short term just bleeding lower the last 5 trading days. But again, from a 2-year chart perspective, just about the top side of this channel, look for a move under 60 in the short term. You could also look at Baidu. Baidu got perfectly up to that $200 level, is now just starting to pull back. The first big red candle we've seen from a stock that was under 140 just a couple weeks ago. So we got some gaps that we've had along the way that are going to get filled, and I think the first logical one's going to be about this 175 level for Baidu. And again, stocks that you really don't want to trade for downside. Amazon continues to move up. That's got a lot of momentum behind it. And Google, despite being down 1%, tough to get in front of this one when you have other names that look like they're starting to roll over. You have Priceline earnings down over 10% today at the lows, closed up down only 9.57%. A stock like Expedia, which rallied on earnings coming back. And if you could draw this trend line across, you can see it broke below this former trend line that it broke above. Let me just pull back because I haven't looked at this chart in a while. It's a 2-year chart. Go to the 5-year chart. You can see what I'm talking about here. This is a beautiful pattern. that really coincided with some pullbacks along the way. We're back under it, and this could be setting up for a big move to the downside. I know everybody's just all gaga and goo-goo from some of these travel names. Expedia just made a purchase of Away. A lot of people think it's a good bargain. We'll see if the stock reacts. Also, Microsoft breaking out. You can see this. This is also something else you kind of want to shy away from if you think the market's going to pull back. There's other names. Look at Disney putting in a lower high here. One of the only Dow components, I believe, at some point today was the only one that was up on the trading session. We have earnings reports later this week. Fossil. Look at Fossil. Somebody asked me about this today. I mean, it broke through long-term trendline support. It just keeps bleeding lower, and actually the recent move off the lows is setting it up for more downside. Wynn Resorts, a similar pattern here, down 7% today. But you look, it's been a stair step to the downside. And in spite of the move it had off of its lows here, still looks very bearish for Wynn Resort. And finally, later this week, we have Loco reporting earnings. Loco, El Pollo Loco. You can see it's drifting to record lows here as it's going to move to the upside. Heavily shorted name, something to watch. All right, I'll see you in the chat room tomorrow. UPBOptionMillionaires.com. S&P 500 futures down over 1% today. See if we can get a continuation tomorrow. Everyone have a great evening. Goodbye.